New Delhi, Israel launched massive strikes across northern Gaza tonight, which reports said were the most intense since the start of the war on October 7. Hamas said internet has been snapped in the Gaza Strip. Reports said contact with Gaza is lost. The Israeli military said it had increased its strikes on Gaza in a very significant way, as news agency AFP live footage captured intense bombardment of the territory's north. "We will continue to strike in Gaza City and around," military spokesman Daniel Hagari said in a televised address. The Hamas government said Israel cut communications and most of the internet across the Gaza Strip today. The government's media office accused Israel of taking the measure to perpetrate massacres with bloody retaliatory strikes from the air, land, and sea, as heavy strikes hit northern Gaza. Rocket warning sirens blared in several cities in Israel while the airstrikes in northern Gaza were going on. Central Tel Aviv was targeted in the rocket attacks today. Hamas said today it had fired salvos of rockets at Israel after intense Israeli bombing of the Palestinian territory. Salvos of rockets in the direction of the occupied territories, Israel, in answer to the massacre of civilians, Hamas's armed wing, the Ezzedine al-Qassam brigades, said on its Telegram channel. The UN chief warned today that Gaza faces an unprecedented avalanche of human suffering due to lack of food, water, and power. "I repeat my call for a humanitarian ceasefire, the unconditional release of all hostages, and the delivery of life-saving supplies," UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres said in a statement. The Israeli army accused Hamas of abusing hospitals in the Gaza Strip for military purposes. The allegation was swiftly denied by Hamas, and the main United Nations agency working in Gaza said earlier it had mechanisms in place to prevent aid being diverted. Hamas wages war from hospitals in Gaza, military spokesman Daniel Hagari told journalists, adding that Hamas was also using fuel stored in hospitals to help carry out its operations. Mr. Hagari specifically identified Al-Shifa Hospital, the largest in Gaza, as one from which Hamas men were operating. "Terrorists move freely in Shifa and other hospitals," he said. Hamas. "ISIS is sick. They turn hospitals into headquarters for their terror. We just released intelligence proving it," Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said in a post on X, formerly Twitter, showing a video claiming how Hamas has been using Gaza's largest hospital for military purpose. A senior member of the Hamas political bureau, Izzet al-Rishk, swiftly fired back at the allegations from the Israeli army, calling them unfounded. "There's no basis in truth in what the spokesman of the enemy army stated," Mr. Rishk said, accusing Israel of making up the allegations to pave the way for a new massacre to be committed against our people. "Gaza City," Hamas said on Friday, it was ready for an invasion of Gaza as Israel said it was extending its ground operation after airstrikes cut communications across the shattered Palestinian territory. Following the series of strikes of the last days, the ground forces are extending the ground operation tonight, military spokesman Daniel Hagari told reporters after 2 straight nights of tank incursions into the Gaza Strip. A top Hamas official said it was ready for an Israeli ground invasion. "If Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu decides to enter Gaza tonight, the resistance is ready," said Izzet al-Rishk, a senior member of the Hamas political bureau on Telegram social media. "The remains of his soldiers will be swallowed up by the land of Gaza." Israel's military said it had increased its strikes in a very significant way, as AFP live footage captured intense bombardment of northern Gaza. Airstrike after airstrike lit up the night sky as thick black smoke clouded the horizon. Hamas's armed wing, the Ezzedine al-Qassam brigades, said on its Telegram channel it responded with salvos of rockets. Hamas said all internet connections and communications across Gaza had been cut, and accused Israel of taking the measure to perpetrate massacres with bloody retaliatory strikes from the air, land, and sea. The Palestinian Red Crescent Society said ambulance services had been disrupted. "We have completely lost contact with the operations room in the Gaza Strip and all our teams operating there," it said on X, formerly Twitter. Hamas called on the world to act immediately to stop Israel attacking Gaza. Israel has heavily bombarded Gaza since Hamas gunmen stormed across the border on October 7, killing 1,400 people, mostly civilians, and kidnapping over 220 others, according to Israeli officials. The Hamas-run health ministry said Friday Israeli strikes on Gaza had now killed 7,326 people, mainly civilians and many of them children. The White House said the United States backs a humanitarian pause so aid can get into